This is not about a blow dryer, and if you thought it was, well, buckle up, Buttercup, because these conversations are hotter than that flat iron you're still wondering if you left on. I'm Kat, a hairstylist, educator, and one of the beauty industry's beautifully defiant misfits. This podcast isn't about viral hair trends, client bashing, or the latest formula for whatever shade of brown we're renaming this season. It's about the stories, the lessons, and the trial and error moments that shape careers, confidence, and the craft. So whether you're starting your journey in Cosmo School, thriving behind the chair, still finding your rhythm, or just looking for that push to get back on track, welcome to This Is Not About a Blow Dryer, where we talk beauty in a whole new way. Welcome back to This Is Not About a Blow Dryer. As per usual, I'm Kat. And today I have one more very special story to share, and it comes from one of my colleagues, but also somebody I've known since my apprenticeship, honestly. Her name is Stephanie Bollinger, and she has actually been a senior stylist since I was an apprentice. Now, one of the things that I've always loved about Stephanie is the epitome of kindness. But what I mean by that isn't that she's just sunshine, bubbles, and rainbows. No, Stephanie is direct to the point and has absolutely zero qualms in helping correct in a way that's inspired to grow. And I know I personally have taken so much of how I teach and how I like to mold people from Stephanie's format. And so I was really grateful when she chose to share her story or allow me to share her story through here. And I really wanted to try to get this to you guys last week because it does come full circle close to around this Christmas time. But even though it's a few days after Christmas, I really hope that maybe somebody hears this and it really just hits and resonates and maybe gives you that little extra bit of inspiration before you decide to either quit or, let your head hang a little too low. This is going to be our last story before we start and dive into Confessions of an Apprentice, where I personally think is going to be a little bit more of an interesting conversation than maybe this last season was, Journey of a Cosmo Student. In my own reflection, I definitely can admit that beauty school was very anticlimactic for me. When I really take the time to reflect and think about it, it was it was a building block, and it was, there was drama and there were things that happened, but the true core of who and what framed me, my career, my decisions, and who I am still at my core of a stylist came from my time as an apprentice. It came from the good, the bad, the, really ugly hair, the really great moments, all of it. It came from all of it. And I think where my career and my beginning really started is Confessions of an Apprentice. So I'm really excited to share this with you guys this coming season. And if you yourself have a story that you want to share, please feel free to email me. You can email me at katiasoriano11@gmail.com. That's going to go ahead and be down in the description. I love sharing other stylist stories, whether you're going through your apprenticeship right now or you went through something and you really feel like that story could help inspire this next generation of stylists, or even this next generation of educators, to really help elevate the industry and leave it better than we found it. One more thing before we get into Stephanie's story that she was kind enough to share. We're going to pick a card of the day. This is one of my favorite things to do, and honestly, I should have started sharing it with you guys earlier, but sometimes it kind of sets the mood. Today and this week, it says, enjoy being yourself and feel no need to copy others. I mean, what's that saying that they say? Imitation is the best form of flattery that mediocrity can give to greatness. Yeah, be yourself. Do your thing. All right, now let's get into this story, shall we? Stephanie writes, let me set the time frame. This was back in the 80s. My background? I had come from your typical middle-class dysfunctional family, and in a state of complete rebellion, I quit high school halfway through my sophomore year, 15 years of age, and started working in restaurants. I got married at 18 to my high school sweetheart and had my daughter before my 19th birthday. We divorced a year later. So there I was, a single mom with no income, and the last year of my education I had actually completed, ninth grade. It was what it was, and I was where I was at. Back then, there was an incredible amount of social judgment if you were a single mother, let alone being young and a high school dropout. Stephanie, relatable. Just so you know, even in the 2000 back in 2006, it was such a cliche. The amount of times that I heard people be like, "Oh, you're a single mom. That must be so hard." Where, if you're a mom, it's hard being a mom always. So, it's so hard to have that stigma around you. So that's really annoying. You become something disposable and shameful. Just another statistic in the making. Fuck, that is real. I signed up for state assistance, medical, food stamps, now called SNAP, and got on a waiting list for low income housing. I was assigned a caseworker at DSHS, and she helped me make a plan. First things first was get my GED so I could enter college. Terrified wasn't even close to how I felt sitting down taking that test. I was fairly certain as long as they didn't ask me to spell anything or grade my sentence structure, I might pass. I dreaded the next few weeks waiting to see the results. I passed and actually scored pretty high. Feeling more confident, I returned to meet with my social worker for the next step. Now remember, this was when Microsoft was first starting out. And if you were on welfare, you had to sign up for school and get a degree or trade under FIP, Family Independence Program. This gave you 9 months to train or educate yourself in a career that would financially support you and your family, because then you were on your own. I signed up for my AA and BA in computer electronics and robotics in the recommendation of my caseworker. It became painfully obvious in a very short period of time I was not cut out for a job where I would be staring at computer screens all day long in a cubicle. I tried everything. Moving plants into my office, moving the office furniture around to look at the window and looking at the window. I broke into tears feeling like a failure all over again and talking to the stupid plants trying to figure out what was wrong with me. Hey, no shame in talking to your plants. They love it. All I could hear was, "You're going to be another teenage dropout, statistic of a failure, just another teenage welfare mom trapped with no way out." It was my mother that actually suggested I get my license and do hair. She reminded me, yes, I was that kid that had a clientele of neighborhood kids. I had cut all my Barbie's hair, and much to our family dog's displeasure, experimenting on his hair, not the dog. He was a miniature sheepdog, so every few months it was just another look after recovering from the previous attempt. Yeah, looking back, really cringeworthy for sure. I'm gonna need photos of that one. Feeling like I had nothing to lose, I made my appointment at Jean Juarez Academy. It had just opened and was in this tiny space in Kenmore. I sat across from a gentleman named Jerry Ahern. Anywhere there was hair, there was someone that did that person's hair. He explained all the different aspects of the industry beyond behind the chair. Platform work, education, fashion shows, TV, the list was endless in career possibilities. That's cool. I flat out cried. It was like always being on the surface and then finding my groove. It clicked. I knew this was for me, without any doubt. I made my appointment with my caseworker, so excited to get the paperwork and start. Her response was not what I expected. It was downright discouraging, to put it mildly. She said statistics show only 7% of beauty school students finish, and hairstylists only last 2 years in the industry. Then they're going to be back on unemployment. Okay, so actually, my guidance counselor in high school told me the same thing. I was basically told I should do Running Start instead of Skill Source through high school, because if I wanted to be successful, I needed to go to college, and beauty school wasn't going to be it. So clearly that's a story that we've been hearing for a really long time. Not that Stephanie's, you get it. I was determined and pointed out it fit the criteria, and this is what I wanted to do. We spent another 20 minutes arguing back and forth before she agreed to sign my papers, approving me for cosmetology school. Next came securing daycare. My caseworker gave me a list of state-funded daycare centers. I was in shock when I saw where it was and what it was. It was the exact place I had done my community service hours when I got in trouble. That's another story for another time. Ugh. We're going to need that story, Stephanie. Needless to say, this was not going to work at all. There was no way in God's green earth I was leaving my baby girl in the care of court appointed criminal service people working off their community service hours. Nope. I finally found a place, but it would take almost all of my monthly welfare assistance check, which was $397, and daycare was $320 a month. It didn't accept state funds or subsidize, but it was clean and they had actual standards of care. I had gotten into low income housing and it was based off of what was left over, my $79. My rent was only $12 because there wasn't anything left. Thank goodness for food stamps, it was the only thing that kept us eating. I could deal with standing in line at the grocery store and feeling the stares of the people when I paid with what at the time looked like Monopoly money. Welfare mom. She should get a real job. She's probably going to have another baby so she gets more money. The judgment was real. Now, if you didn't know back in the day, like SNAP benefits or food stamps, it really did look like Monopoly money. It wasn't in a debit card. So that's what she's talking about when she says that. I always told myself that my daughter was too young to realize just how poor we were and oblivious to people's stares as she sat in the grocery cart when we checked out. I prayed she wouldn't remember any of this. I felt so ashamed and no one knew just how bad it really was. I was 3/4 of the way through beauty school and it was right before Christmas. I was stressing. I had no money, zip, zilch, nada, and a baby girl that had just written a letter to Santa. What was I going to do? I had absolutely no money to buy her presents, and what was I going to say to her? It's okay, honey, Santa must have forgotten or just missed our house. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do that to my baby girl. I decided I was going to quit beauty school, get a real job, and really quickly make some money. I wasn't sure how, but I just couldn't let my daughter down. It wasn't going to happen. I was in between clients on the clinic floor and walked into the office. Moira was sitting behind the desk. I sat down in the chair and said I needed to quit and today would be my last day. She asked why. I broke down explaining everything. Low-income housing, daycare, food stamps, my baby girl, Santa, and Christmas. I just needed to get a job and fix this. Moira did the unspeakable. She shared her story of being a single mom too and handed me $100, asking me to please not give up. I broke down even harder, sobbing. I said I would pay her back and she looked at me and said pay it forward instead. That's what was done for her. I walked out of her office, red puppy eyes and all, back on the clinic floor, tried to pull it together and pick up my next client. Go figure, my next client pulls out a Christmas present. I just wanted to bring a little something for your daughter. Full-blown tears. And the day went on like that. My beauty school clients brought in presents for my daughter. Having no idea. Ooh, this one makes your eyes leaky. My beauty school clients brought in presents for my daughter, having no idea they were my Christmas miracle. Santa came and my baby girl wouldn't have to wake up to an empty Christmas tree. I couldn't believe it. I got home that night and my dad surprised us by bringing over a little Christmas tree and lights. It was beyond words how grateful I felt and full of hope. I finished beauty school and directly went to advanced training with Jean Juarez. My caseworker finally approved a monthly grant to supplement my daycare costs through my advanced training, which helped us so much. I became a technician, which was technically a colorist, at the Bellevue Jean Juarez salon. I'd never told anyone about that day. Only Jerry and Moira knew, but I later found out there was one other person that had heard my story. It was Jean Juarez himself. I was asked with a handful of other women who Jean picked to go to campfire retreats for teenage mothers, to share our stories and hopefully inspire, encourage, and let them know they weren't alone. I listened to all the others share their stories of struggles and where they came from and the success in life they have now. I shared as well, and we answered questions and of course did a little schmoozing over their hair. It was a heartfelt love to give and be a part of that experience. A few years later, I was at work doing a client and this younger woman walked up to me. Stephanie, I said, yes, can I help you? She smiled and said, I don't know if you remember me, but I was one of the mothers that you guys came out to and spoke to. I wanted to let you know I graduated college and my son and I have a real apartment and I have a really great job. I wanted to let you know that what you said mattered and I held on to it. Yep, I hugged her and we both cried. Just two moms knowing what each other had been through. Tears, determination, despair, and coming out the other side. It still brings me to tears when I think about that day I almost quit. The miracles of love that were beyond imagining what happened that day left me so grateful. The woman that came back and answered the question, am I really offering anything meaningful that can help these girls with sharing my story? Yes. I would do it again and again if I could help just one person not give up on their dreams and goals. It still fills my heart with gratitude and love. Yes, it's been almost 40 years of doing hair. I've been privileged to do and experience so many different aspects of the industry, and I still love it. I've traveled around the world, raised two beautiful daughters, and paid for private school educators for both of them. My world has been an incredible amount of options today and experiences to live in. I'm behind the chair now and teaching now at Salon 8 in Bellevue. It still excites me to see how special something in someone's eyes when it clicks, or the pride of their books fill up and the connections made with their clients. The most powerful lessons I've learned is the language of the heart and the power of authenticity of who we are and sharing that with love. Thank you for letting me share my story. Your fellow stylist traveling this crazy, amazing road with you, Stephanie. Thanks for sharing that, Stephanie. That was great. I think a lot of us have been through those places, where we've almost quit or we've, felt so helpless, in our process of growing and whatnot. When she shared part of this with me, we were just talking and I was like, Stephanie, what do you got? Come share something with me. Um, I actually didn't know all of this. And I know it personally triggered a little soft spot in my heart because similarly, so I had, so many Christmases. I had a Christmas, that I was sharing with her where, as an apprentice, I was making like $12 an hour, if that, so I was bringing home maybe $500 every 2 weeks. And then at the end of the day of apprenticing somebody, I might make $20 if my stylist remembered to tip me. And I, again, didn't know if I would actually be able to get Preston something for Christmas. And one Christmas week, I was apprenticing one stylist. Her name was Derry, and she loved to take care of her apprentices. And I wasn't lucky enough to be her apprentice, but I was lucky enough to help her that week. And she had a daughter that was Preston's age, and she, gosh, I think she tipped me like at the time, it doesn't seem like a lot, but I think she tipped me like 50 or $60 at the end of one day. And I ran down and I used it actually to buy Preston a Build-A-Bear, which I don't even know if they make Build-A-Bears anymore. You would customize and design your own little bear. They were kind of expensive, but I was able to make a little personal voice recording for it, and so he could hear my voice whenever we weren't together. And he actually he still has that. It was such a special gift for him. But now as an adult, he knows like what went into it. But there are so many times, where, we all have the struggle. It's not unique. It is unique to our own circumstances and what we go through. But in this community, I think we really need to start voicing our stories a little bit more and, being there for somebody and saying, hey, we've been through it. We can help you. How can we help? It's possible to get past it. You don't have to go through it alone. So I thought this was really beautiful that, Stephanie was really open to have this conversation and share this story with us and, maybe make some of our eyes leak, especially this holiday season, because I think that's really great. And to be able to continue to pay it forward, and not only pay it forward, within this moment, but continue to pay it forward by continuing to share her story, which is part of the reason I really wanted to create This Is Not About a Blow Dryer, right? This is for us to be able to share our stories, lessons, and experiences so we can really uplift each other. We can be there for each other. And just remember, like, we got you. This is our time to kind of be the aunties and take care of younger generations or hold each other accountable to continue to be better. So thank you again, Stephanie, for sharing this with me. If you yourself have a story you want to share, like I mentioned before, we're getting into Confessions of an Apprentice. And getting into Confessions of an Apprentice, you're going to hear, the struggles, the daily, the education, the model hunting, all of that. But if there's anything that you want to share, your apprentice journey, what you learned, maybe you had a shit apprenticeship. Maybe somebody like totally bamboozled you and said you were going to be doing learning and this, and maybe you were picking up their dry cleaning and doing all of this. And, we can go ahead and maybe looking back, reflect and say, Oh, crap. Like, here were some of the red flags, like, I wish I would have noticed to begin with. But, you heard Stephanie's story. You're still hearing mine. We still want to hear yours. Email those guys in, emails in the description box. Otherwise, I will catch you next time when we have another conversation that's not about a blow dryer. Happy holidays. Mwah.